Today we're going to be starting a new chapter, chapter 7. What is today's lesson about? Probability, okay? So there's a few vocab words that I want you to know for today's lesson. So if you would pull out your red pen and go ahead and fill these in on your notes. First one is an experiment, okay? Basically, this is an investigation that has varying results. That means different kinds of results can come from the experiment that you do. How many of you have ever done a science experiment before, okay? Different groups might get different results, all right? The outcome, that's the possible results that you could get from your experiment. Next up, an event is a collection of one or more outcomes, and then favorable outcomes, we'll talk a lot about today, are the outcomes that come from a specific event that you were doing an experiment for. So let's talk about this, and we're going to answer some questions about the spinner that you see pictured here on the board. Problem A, you spin the spinner. How many different possible outcomes are there?
8.
There's 8 different possible outcomes. How did you come up with that?
Just counted the different sections.
Okay, he counted how many different sections there were here on our spinner. Are some of the numbers repeating themselves?
Yes.
Yes, but each different number is still a different outcome, okay? So you can see there's a couple of 4s, there's a few 1s, okay? Then there's some 2, 3, 6. Next up, what are the favorable outcomes of spinning an even number?
1.
Okay, look back, favorable outcomes, the word that we just talked about, it's the outcomes of a specific event. We are looking for the specific event of what? Even numbers. Okay, so let's just talk about this. Is this 4 an even number?
Yes.
What about the 1?
No.
How about the 2?
Yes.
The 1?
No.
The 6?
Yes.
The 3?
No.
The 1?
No.
The 4?
Yes.
Okay, so here's what it says. What are the favorable outcomes? That means specifically which numbers can come out and be an even number, okay?
4, 2, 6.
Okay, so it doesn't really matter what order you put it in. I always like to write it in from least to greatest, but once again, any order is fine. Those are the favorable outcomes. That means that's what could possibly happen if we're looking for even numbers. Now the next one, it says how many ways. So we're going to count the number of ways that we can spin a number less than 2. So now let's go back over here to our spinner. What numbers over there are less than 2?
1.
Okay, anything else?
No.
What about the 2? No, that equals 2. It is not less than 2. So guys, how many ways are there?
3.
There are 3 ways. Okay, now I want to teach you a different word. For this, the probability is the likelihood that an event will occur. So you can see I've got a little diagram here. Who can give me an example of something that is just straight up impossible to happen? There is a 0% chance that that will ever happen in this lifetime. Okay, very true. It is impossible for a person to fly using their own arms and legs. That is correct. 0% chance that could happen. A person to become invisible. That is impossible. It's just not going to happen. We might see it in the movies, but sadly in our real life, it is impossible to happen. Now I want to look at another one. Let's look at being certain. Who can tell me something that the likelihood of something happen is 100% certain? It is 100% certain that everybody in this room has a birthday, okay? Because you're here. It is 100% certain, okay? What about this? Is it 100% certain that your phone will eventually die? Yes, so you need to plug it in, all right? It is 100% certain it will die at some point if you don't charge it. Another one that I want to talk to you about is this one right here in the middle. What percentage is that in the middle? 50%. How many of you ever heard someone say, there's a 50-50 chance that's going to happen? Okay? All right, so equally likely or not likely to happen. Next up, unlikely is about 25%, okay? Probably not going to happen. It's unlikely, but it could happen. And then next up, likely, probably going to happen, but not necessarily 100% certain going to happen, okay? So these are some words that we're going to use. Now, obviously, there's going to be like highly likely or not highly likely, but these are the 5 main words that I want us to focus on when we're talking about the likelihood of something happening. So let's use some of those words as we look at number 2. There is an 80% chance of rain, a 50% chance of thunderstorms, and a 15% chance of hail tomorrow. What percentage did it say there was a percent chance of rain? Which one? 80%. So let's go ahead and write down 80%. if I tell you that, which one of these words up here that we just talked about goes with 80%? Likely. So the likelihood is, it's pretty likely that it could happen. It doesn't mean it will 100% happen, but with an 80% chance, it is likely to happen. Next up, thunderstorms. What percent chance did it give us there? 50% chance. So what would that be?
Equally likely to happen or not happen.
Equally likely to happen or not happen. All right, then we've got one final one, hail. What percent chance is it that it will hail tomorrow? 15%. So what is that? It is unlikely to happen. It could, but it's unlikely that it will. All right, number 3. This is something that I have seen happening in the lunchrooms before, sometimes even in our own classroom. You flip a bottle and you record the number of times it lands upright and the number of times it lands on its side. Looking at this picture over here, where is it landing more? On its side, which is true for what I've seen for most people. Describe the likelihood that the bottle lands upright on your next flip, okay? So let's just think about how we would do this. There's going to be a formula, and it's called favorable outcomes over the total outcomes, okay? But for sure, it's favorable over total. Now, if you remember from our notes today, we said favorable outcomes are the outcomes of a specific event happening. What event are we hoping to happen?
It will land upright.
That it's going to land upright, okay? So now let's look right now. How many times has it landed upright?
2.
2 times. How many total times did they flip it?
25.
How'd you get 25?
Because I added the upright to the side.
You are correct. They obviously landed 2 right there. They landed 23 on its side. 23 plus 2 is 25 total. All right, so what's that percentage?
8%.
Good job. Okay, so we had a 0.08, then we remember 8%. Guys, what's the likelihood that it's going to happen? It's not impossible. The only way for it to be impossible is a 0%.
Not going to happen.
So what is it?
Unlikely.
It's unlikely. Yes, you could say words like very unlikely, because it is very unlikely that you're going to land it again, but it could be possible. Does anyone have a bottle right now that would like to try it out? All right, so according to our experiment, did we prove ourselves correct? Yes, it was unlikely, and it did not happen. The next couple ones, these are think, pair, share. I want you and your partner to go ahead and do the rest of this page together, number 1 and 2. First one, how many possible outcomes are there? What was that, guys? 8. How'd you find that? All right, when you look over here, there are 8 tiles in our box. What are, not how many are there, but what are the favorable outcomes? Once again, not how many are there. What are they? A. What else? A, another A, and E. Remember, whenever it says this right here, favorable outcomes, I want to know what specifically are the ones that are favorable. So if you just put 3, erase it, and fix it, please. Now it says, how many ways can choosing a constant occur? 5 different ways. What were those ways? All right, very good. Next up, the next example that we had today, describe the likelihood of the event to happen. 2/5. What percentage is 2/5?
40%.
40%, okay, because it was 0.4, so it's at 40%. What word goes with 40%? Unlikely. Now, it'd probably be highly unlikely, but because it's lower than 50%, it's still in the unlikely category. Once again, you could say highly unlikely or kind of unlikely, okay, but use the word unlikely. All right, it actually wouldn't probably be highly unlikely because it's close to the 50-50 mark. Next up, the probability that it rains tomorrow is 12%.
Unlikely.
Unlikely, okay? Someone said very unlikely. I'm okay with very unlikely, just as long as you've got the unlikely word in there. Tonight's homework is to do section 7.1. And today, I'm going to go ahead and give you some time to work on that in class.